Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our Technology Virtual Investor Conference. Our next live presentation comes from Bubblr Inc. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you are interested in meeting with Bubblr, please click on the Schedule Meetings tab found in the platform navigation bar. You will be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Steve Morris, founder, chair, and interim CEO of Bubblr Inc., which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol BBLR. Welcome, Steve.
Welcome. Thanks for the introduction. So, before we start, I think it's important to just a little bit of background here and say why I started the company and what it's really about. And it was never really about money in the first place, to be honest. So I don't think any of us are too impressed with the state of the world right now. And what I'm really concerned about was being able to look my grandchildren in the eye in a few years' time and saying, I know we've bequeathed a complete mess of a planet for you, but at least I've done my best anyway, to try and make the world a better place. And fundamental to that really is the kind of decline in the performance and effectiveness of the internet. So really that's what the technology is all about. So look, we're not going to fix climate change. We're not going to solve the problem in Ukraine. But what it will help is it will help stop things like fake news, conspiracy theories being spread on the internet, things like Facebook using anger to try and just to get more money, and personal data being used and abused by big tech, and also being open to being attacked by kind of bad actors like Iran, Russia, and just for the fun of it. So I'll move quickly on anyway. I don't particularly want to bore you with a kind of death by 1,000 bullet points. But suffice to say, our technology is profoundly disruptive. It really is, disruptive in a really big way. In fact, in my opinion, nothing as disruptive as this has ever hit the internet. And, we can all see that just ourselves by the way, the internet's deteriorating and stuff. And a lot of companies say they're kind of innovative or kind of disruptive, in fact, but they're not really. I always quote Homer Simpson, who sort of said, the best innovation takes an existing product and puts a clock on it. Well, we definitely don't do that. We're there to kind of really shake things up and kind of change the world for it in a better way. So I'll skip through the safe harbor stuff and get on to the basics, really. So we've been an ethical technology company from the get-go, and it's been absolutely critical that we do that. That doesn't mean we're not going to be extremely profitable and very valuable, because we will be. So, in fact, one of our patents has been independently valued at $4.7 billion. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So that's one of the elements of it. Patents being critical as well from the point of view of making our intellectual property defensible. And fixing the internet, really or fixing the problems of it, is we've really got to fix search. That's the fundamental problem. That's the fundamental issue where it all goes wrong. The monetization of search has led us down this dark path and led us to the dreadful world where we are now. And part of that is consumer anonymity, and this is becoming a more and more critical issue globally. And one of our directors advises the EU and also the UK, particularly on all matters to do with the internet. And I don't think it's going to be too far in the future when the EU completely bans cookies altogether. So anonymity is critical, and it's critical to everything we do. So it also is geared towards to help small communities, and also geared up to allow small businesses to compete with giant corporates, which are unable to do with the current regime. Somebody, in terms of a one-line kind of summary of what it is, somebody once described it as being Yellow Pages on steroids crossed with Tinder. And that's probably a kind of reasonable kind of way of looking at it. It's interesting, really, that Yellow Pages, even in 2010, I think, was bigger than Google in terms of revenues. It's obviously not anymore. But that was because people, the primary source of marketing contacts in those days was using lists, and lists was still, kind of still paper to begin with, really. So what we're doing is we're saying, if like instead of funding the company by ads, we're funding it by listings. So it's kind of turning things on the head, really. And then finally, as a company, we were ready to go on NASDAQ in November 2022. But the investment bank we were working with at the time kind of pulled the deal because market sentiment was really negative. I don't think there were any IPOs November, December. I think they've just started again now. Now, the irony of that is, although we weren't happy about it at the time, it's probably the best thing that happened to us because we've managed to kind of reinvent the company and made a lot of significant changes. We've got a brand new board of directors. Now, we focused on getting on QB. We're focusing very much on retail investors as well because we have over 600 founder investors. So we know it kind of works as a retail proposition. People want to become advocates and supporters of what we do. So that's a quick summary of the status of the business right now. So let's go into some details on why the internet search model wrong. Well, it's been around for 25 years, hasn't changed. It's a search box and you put a load of text in and that's the end of it, But a lot of things have changed in 25 years, but the way we search hasn't really. Why was that? Because it was originally the Tim Berners-Lee model was designed just for sharing information, not as a commercial thing. So it was never designed for commercial use or adverts or anything. So it's interesting, actually. In 1997, Sergey Brin and Larry Page famously said, "We expected advertising-funded search engines will be inherently biased towards the advertisers and away from the needs of consumers." Well, how right they were. So, just as an example where things have changed, and we know it is it's already under threat, that model. We've seen the emergence of ChatGPT as one example of where people are finding fault with the established search engines, and the other thing as well with the emergence of apps, particularly for vertical markets. So you're never going to find a pizza using Google on your mobile phone. You're never going to book a hotel using Google on your mobile phone. You use vertical apps. That's what everybody does. And these vertical apps charge the suppliers an absolute fortune. They gouge their eyesight. They really do. So if you like, our proposition is like a super app where it combines every vertical all in one place. So it doesn't work for small businesses. Small businesses, 31, 32 million small businesses in the US. Hardly any of them use Google or Facebook to get marketing leads. It's just far too expensive and it's too complex as well. So they're more or less excluded from participation. It's very, very easily gamed. This whole thing of SEO, why does that even exist? Search engine optimization. And also you get bad actors like China, Russia and Iran exploit it and kind of try and disrupt kind of Western democracies. So, and it's basically because it's just dependent on advertising and the use and abuse of consumer data. So it's long overdue for a complete reset. So why is our stuff better? Well, basically we looked at search using what commonly known as nowadays is first principle design, originally thought of by Socrates in classical Greek times, famously adopted by Elon Musk when he was looking at how he could completely disrupt the automotive industry and the space industry for that matter, by looking at things and saying, look, we started off this thing, so rather than just doing marginal gains and little changes, completely review the way we do things, look at what we're trying to achieve and work backwards from that. We've done exactly the same thing with search. So the other key thing is searching for goods and services is profoundly different from searching for information. So we have two separate patterns for it, one for goods and services and one for information. And the mechanisms are profoundly different as well. So our system only works in apps, be it mobile or desktop. We don't do anything in the browser, because as soon as you put it in the browser, you're exposing yourself to bad actors, to bots, anti-cookies and all the rest of it that goes with it. And there's no need for it, So, and finally, particularly for searching for goods and services, we will always be an established search engine because the data is far better. We use zero-party data that's supplies by the suppliers in the first place in real time. So it's always going to be better data. The traditional search engines, they use spiders and web crawlers, and they produce a database that's a day old. It's hopeless, particularly when you're trying to search for availability. Our availability is all in real time. Location matters as well for a lot of people. How many times we've been to a website and bought something and find out it's coming from China? So so there's a lot of ways we're fundamentally better than the established model. So how's it delivered then? So we in terms of a platform, so it's going to get delivered as an open source platform, software as a service open source platform. And by the way, these are traditionally very, very profitable setups, open source platforms. There's plenty of most of the even small ones actually have multi-billion-dollar valuations. So and I think we're probably going to be the first open source platform where the open source bit is Flutter code. So for those of you who don't know, it's a fabulous product, Google product, which allows you to be able to produce source code that can run on anything. The same source code, it can run on Android, it can run on Apple, it can run on we can produce a Windows app, it can produce a Linux app. So so that's the open source bit, but for it to operate, it's got to run through our platform. So and the secret sauce that we have in our back end is the way all the searches are conducted are all profoundly data driven. So we can imagine these apps, which is like a combination of all the different vertical apps you can think of, all in one. And the user journeys are going to be different depending on what you're buying. It's different buying a pizza or whether you're going to get a haircut or whether you're going to book a hotel or you're searching for a classic car, whatever it is. It's a different kind of user journey. But all those user journeys are data driven. There's a lot of really smart tech behind it. So it means the apps can be relatively dumb and we don't need to update them all the time, and we can change the behavior all done remotely. So we also provide online consoles for licensees to be able to manage their merchants, their suppliers who they recruit. So there's a fair bit of complexity with that. And finally, the suppliers, the small businesses, largely small businesses, large businesses can use it as well. They have their own consoles as well to be able to manage their own data to make sure that their first party data is up to date in real time. So little bit about the patents quickly. I'd say the main patent, which was approved. This is one for goods and services. It's a utility patent. That's based on really a couple of claims being collectively unique. Always difficult to do utility patents rather than design ones. So, and the two elements of that combine together provide the novelness or uniqueness of it is, first of all, asynchronous search. So in other words, when you search for things, you don't get all the answers right away. They can get delivered over time. I mean, Google Alerts is an example of asynchronous search. But the key thing is combining that with anonymity, where people aren't given, so there's no email address, there's no phone number, there's nothing. Consumer anonymity is critical. It's the cornerstone of everything we do. So that patent was, it should really be, it's titled an internet search mechanism. It should really be called an internet search mechanism for goods and services. It only works in apps. Finally, so it was approved, it was granted in the US, actually in all the other territories since then, on April 13, 2021. And we subsequently independently valued by the best expert in the world actually to do this. I actually spent a lot of money trying to find the guy in the first place. At $4.7 billion in a particular scenario if it was acquired by a big internet giant. Unfortunately, we can't put 4.7 billion on the balance sheet. So the second one has got a terrible name, which is the one for search information, contextual envelope, and kind of, I won't even bother going there. But again, it's another utility patent. So what that does is when we're searching information, what we're saying is we relate searches together. So you do a primary search, and any subsequent searches to that are pertinent to the original search you did. That's one side of it. And then the other side is the results that you get. Is we instead of just taking the hypertext links that's in the pages, we actually generate real time hypertext links in that, which is going to be relevant to your search. So it's a far better search tool. So that's the essential. That's the novelness of it. Now, although we've only filed that in November, I've got a great patents agent who I've worked with for years, and he's a great believer in what we're doing, and he's confident that one's going to go live. We haven't had any objections so far. The interesting thing is it works brilliantly with LLMs. We've only kind of discovered this recently, so it works brilliantly with things like ChatGPT, and we've got a really big announcement. So we've got a press release going out Monday. I can't tell you about it, obviously, for insider trading reasons, but it's I think it's going to be it has a lot of relevance to that. So it's product related. So please look out for our press releases on Monday, where we'll talk about that one. And finally, the status of it. So it was filed. It took me 18 months actually to get the patents agreed in the first place. I spent far more time on this than I did in the original one. And there's absolutely no prior art out there that's anything like it. So we're fairly confident of getting it over the line. Practically, what does this mean really, and how it gets delivered? Well, it's first of all, our stuff only works on apps, mobile and desktop. That's critical, for the goods and services side. It's profoundly anonymous. So if you're using this and you wanted to engage with a supplier, you don't even though you can chat with them, you don't have to give any personal information away at all. The consumer's always in control of the channel. The search results can be delivered over time, as I did before. So this gives you what we call concierge search. So if you're searching for something that isn't currently available, but you're prepared to wait to get it, and we've got an example on the website that you want to check out where somebody's looking for a particular classic car. So it works in that scenario perfectly. So which again is genuinely unique. But the key thing again, I go back to the thing, we just got better data. Far better data than anybody else can have. So that's critical. So on the information side, as I said, I think I've kind of covered that before, but I'll skip through that one because I don't want to waste too much time on it. We've come up with this idea of an ethical web manifesto, which is a bit like kind of Web 3.0, but one of the key things here really where we differ from Web 3.0 is how we define what decentralization. With us, we decentralize the profits, we decentralize the power to the people, to our licensees who are going to be using this technology. So that means they share the profits, which means that we generally decentralize it, and they're party to it, and they make it work. They become participants, active participants to make it work. So we're not building another Leviathan, another Google 2. All of these other points, you can pick these up after a minute, kind of. But we want to, they're all important in their own way. Leveling the playing field. We always had this vision when the internet started off. For those who are old enough to remember what it was like, it was going to be this utopian future where small companies compete with large ones. Well, that didn't work out the way it should have done. So again, I won't spend too much time on that. Board of directors. It's interesting there because the three guys on the right hand side are all new. In fact, with Paul Morrissey, the right hand most guy, who's our chief strategy officer, we only filed for the 8K about that yesterday. So part of our kind of post not doing a NASDAQ list, we completely reviewed everything, and we got a brand new board of directors in. They were all very, very experienced guys. This isn't their first rodeo. They've done it all before. Paul in particular is an extraordinary character in his own right, but all of them are great guys. We've also got reasonably impressive advisory board. So couldn't state a play quickly. We're ready for a NASDAQ listing when market conditions improve. Recently uplisted to QB. It only happened kind of last week. All we're focused on right now is improving our market cap and delivering the tech. And brand new board, new strategy, and we're on our way to being a unicorn, which I don't see as any reason why we shouldn't be. So Finally, next steps. I know there's a ton here, and I've had to go through it really, really quickly, but and we are kind of, I know it's a completely unique proposition. And if you are genuinely interested in it, I'd recommend you check out the website. Take the time to watch the videos and do everything on that, and especially on the ones of how we're going to fix things. And then finally, we can, if you do turn out to be an investor in this proposition, then you'll also be able to look in your grandkids' eyes and sort of and put your hand on your heart and certainly give it your best shot, but still make a really good return on it. So there's my details there. So now that is whirlwind sort of what we do. I hope it kind of made sense. If it didn't, feel free, you get a copy of the presentation, and I'll start looking at the questions now. What are capital needs to reach your vision? And do you have any key partnerships in place? Right, okay. Short-term capital needs, we don't need much. I think we're looking at a total of $7 million. That's all we need. And that gets us to significant profitability. We don't need a huge much. Do we have any key partnerships in place? Not right now, but very soon we will have. I can't tell you the details, but we've engaged a significant media partner who was discussing. We hope to make some announcements about that in the next few weeks. So it's a really good question, because we're only a small company. So the secret to our success is making partnerships. And that's what the focus is going to be. We're not going to be recruiting thousands of salesmen knocking on doors to say the last thing we want to be. We want to remain a small company, just focused on our IP and nothing else. Go-to-market strategy. Okay, that's a really good question. And how do you drive adoption to Bubblr? So the go-to-market strategy, if you check the website out, we have this mythical town called Greenville. Apparently there's a Greenville in every state in the US. I doubt there's one in Hawaii actually, but so the go-to-market strategy is to get licensees who, with the way we organise this, the licensees take the majority of the revenue. They take 80%. We just keep 20% on as a license fee charge, and they do all the work. So they go around and we can help them with developing the app from the templates we deliver, but they basically from the community go around, knock on all the doors, they recruit all the people. To be honest, one of the particular partner I was alluding to before, they could do all that themselves completely, because that's the line of business they're in without telling you who they are. So the way is, the way forward really is we're actually going to people and saying, look, would your local community like a brand new source of revenue? And also going to help all your small businesses in your territory, and also mean all your consumers don't have to share their personal data with anybody. Who's not going to say? And these are significant amounts of money they're going to be making here, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions a month. So we're kind of decentralizing this thing in terms of the revenue that's generated to the local community that builds these apps. So I hope that kind of explains the go-to-market strategy, but it very much involves partners as well. That's a critical thing. Can I give any technical details on how it works? Does it change anything at the protocol level? So it doesn't change anything at the protocol level. We use established protocols. We use XMPP, for the chat side. It's like everybody else does. There's no new protocols. The smart stuff in it is probably the super smart stuff is, and we do use a lot of kind of clever database stuff, the Neo4j database and stuff or whatever, and obviously we're using Flutter for delivered in the templates. I actually do that myself, and I think it's a great product, but it changes by the second. But we're not fundamentally changing the internet really in terms of protocols. So it doesn't change anything on a protocol level. Let me go down further. Well, that's about it. I've already got those questions. So I thought there'd be more. Never mind. Maybe nobody understood the explanation. So yeah, on the technology side, it's if we go into a bit more detail, we use a lot of we use Elasticsearch for some of it. We use Neo4j for our for our graph database. And we also use Postgres SQL, which we find very, very useful for build these data-driven conversations that drive all the queries. So so the secret of that is the way it's structured is we don't really have to change the apps very much. In fact, we barely have to change the apps once they're launched. So we can get change in the behavior and functionality completely by changing the back end. Any more? Right. Okay. So should we? We'll wrap it up there then. Okay. Okay. Yes. Does each Greenville have their own app? Yeah. Of course they do. Yeah. So each Greenville has their own app. In terms of territories, that's quite a good question because it might be some territories that might say it's not done at the town level. It might be done like, for instance, in Canada, might be the whole of Ontario or whatever. There's no real kind of limit to it. We're just using it at town level. I mean, it kind of appeals to me doing it at town level because we can see this in a lot of developed countries now, say in the UK and in the US, where you see towns in the Midwest, a bit like towns in the north of England, where they're massively deprived because they haven't dealt with deindustrialization. So, and this gives them an opportunity to reinvigorate the local communities. So, okay, I'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much for taking the time out to look at the proposition, and so.